Every year I get asked why I hold this event. And every year, as I navigate the ups and downs, I ask myself the same question. But every year I become more and more proud of it. The women I've met over the last 7 years, the support I've received, the friends I've made, and of course the audience. Without you, we would not have an event that is so unique, and it is you that makes it worthwhile. So thank you all for supporting this conference and believing in it as much as we did over 7 years ago. Women in Media was born through conversation. A conversation between friends on a long winter's night in Ballybunion. A time when we all, having worked hard over the summer, have time to stop, to take time out and to talk to each other. On this particular evening, our discussion was led by our elder statesman in town, Jackie Horrigan. He talked us through Ballybunion in the 60s and the 70s and how primarily the businesses in town were driven by the local women. He went on to explain how the Binchies and the O'Higgins and many others came to Ballybunion for their holidays in the summer months. In the midst of this conversation, Mary Cummins was mentioned. My ears pricked up, my interest was piqued, and the rest, as they say, is history. Conversation is the essence of this weekend. We come together to listen, to talk, and to get to know each other. It cannot be stressed how important it is to talk, to listen, and to understand. Conversation breaks down barriers, preconceptions, fears, and misunderstandings. It is terrific that we as women can gather here this weekend, taking the time to get to know each other and discussing what is important in our world right now. I began writing this address last week, trying to highlight the importance of conversation in driving social change. And as I wrote, the news of the killing of Lyra McKee broke. Her TED Talk at Stormont found a new life on social media. In it, she addressed some of the issues surrounding the LGBTQ movement and the need to have hard conversations. She had spoken to hardline conservatives who had subsequently softened their outlook. And when she asked them what changed their mind, they all replied it was the conversation. So can this conference act as a doorway to a new beginning for a more inclusive conversation? Through conversation, we may not solve all of the problems facing us, but it's a starting point, and it should encourage us to try to bring about change, and it most certainly should encourage us to engage in this weekend of good, gritty conversation. Good conversation, they say, is like good black coffee, and it's just as hard to sleep after. And if our nights here over the last few years are anything to go by, we must have had some incredible conversations. So, as regards the programme, we have a varied and interesting programme with, I hope, something for everyone. And this year's event is bookended by Women in Literature coming up after us, telling our stories, which will be ably chaired by the fantastic Barbara Scully, and takes place immediately here this evening. The Brexit panel on Sunday is chaired by Sarah Carey, featuring the former Taoiseach Bertie Ahern, the first Prime Minister of the EU, Mairead McGuinness. And our long-standing Women in Media panel will kick things off tomorrow, Saturday, chaired by Katie Hannon, followed directly by our political symposium, chaired by Mary Dunn, the Head of Journalism in UL. New discussion panels this year includes our STEM panel, a very important discussion to attract more of our young girls, including my own, into this challenging area of work. The panel will feature Anne O'Leary, CEO of Vodafone Ireland, sponsor of Women in Media, to whom I cannot thank enough for agreeing to sponsor Women in Media for the second year. So thank you to Anne and Vodafone. Anne, a force of nature, will lead a 60k cycle in aid of breast cancer on Sunday morning, having been out jogging the previous morning. So the next job leaves me to see if I can get her in for a swim, thus completing Ballybunion's version of a triathlon. So I'd now like Anne to come up here and give us a few words.
We have a lot of plans for cycling, etc., but I'm just not so sure with the wind that it would be the best idea. But hopefully we will get out on our bikes, certainly Sunday should be good. Thank you to Joan and to everybody. I'm delighted to be here, back in Ballybunion. So it was a lovely journey down. We got here at 6 o'clock and I was lovely and cosy in my room and I kind of wanted to stay there. And you talked about black coffee, but maybe good red wine and conversations would be better. And on evenings like this, it's about just staying inside and enjoying each other's company. So since I spoke to you last year, I think things have continued to improve for women in Ireland, most strikingly the repeal of the 8th Amendment last May. And there's no doubt, as Irish women, we have more rights and freedoms than our mothers, grandmothers and great-grandmothers. However, gender equality, which is very close to my heart, has yet to be achieved in many areas. Progress has been painfully slow, and there is much more for us all to do. As a woman in Ireland, you're likely to be paid less than your male counterparts. You're more likely to face sexual violence and harassment and continue to have the responsibility of being the primary caretaker and caregiver, So we really need the people working in the media and in public life here in this room to continue to address the many irregularities and inequalities faced by women. Those who write the story, conduct the interview, or decide what story to run are incredibly powerful when it comes to framing a debate or bringing an issue to the public's attention. I believe the more women we have in these roles and making those decisions is really important, and that is why we support this great event. It's also extremely important that a woman's perspective is prevalent through all public life and public discussion. We need women to write and speak about issues facing women. We also need female voices present in all debates, be they social, political or economic. It's not limited to the media. Women should be represented across all spectrums of public life. I'm delighted that Kerry County Council is involved as a sponsor of this conference and that we'll have several politicians here over the weekend as well. In the private sector, Irish businesses certainly have a long way to go, but Vodafone is certainly playing its part. I'm personally very proud of the fact that I have 50% of Vodafone's Ireland senior leadership team are female. We believe that our strong commitment to gender diversity is a source of great business strength and differentiation for us. Our workflows reflects the customer base we serve and the society we operate in, be it gender, race, sexual orientation or age. So I'm delighted to be here again and very proud that Vodafone has continued to sponsor this very important conference. I truly believe that having more female representation in the media and public life can play an important role in making Ireland a better place, not just for women, but for everyone. So thank you. I look forward to hearing the many debates and conversations over the weekend. And as I said, and I'm really looking forward to the conversations over nice wine and no coffee. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. John is the wine man. No, I'm pure, you know. So earlier I mentioned the friends that I've made through women in the media. So 3 of them just happened to be on this stage this evening. Barbara Scully, Keogh and Mary Rose Stafford. Mary Rose I met in a darkened pub in Tralee in 2019, the inaugural year of Women in the Media. She at that point wearing her Fall to Ireland hat. Mary Rose and I, although fellow Wexford women, we had not met. We were separated by the ocean at birth, she from Rosslare Strand and myself from the Hook Peninsula, and it took years for living in Kerry for us to finally meet. Mary will address us this evening in her current capacity as the Head of School, Business and Computing in the IT Tralee. Mary.
I'm actually going to move over here, if you don't mind, because I have a few photographs I want to show you. I have my microphone right. Okay, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. So I suppose what I'm going to talk about tonight is actually about global communications, but it's a story that's very dear to my heart and a project that we're really excited about in Kerry. And I should say that our CEO and our county manager, Maura Merle, was meant to be here tonight, but because of the storm, she's actually the at the control centre of what's going on, so she couldn't make it. And she was meant to talk about all the wonderful projects in Kerry, including Ballybunion and the Marconi celebrations, and she was meant to lead into my talk, so you'll forgive me now, I didn't have that lead in. So what I want to talk about this evening is a project that we're working on in Kerry. It's the Transatlantic Cable Story, and it's a World Heritage project that we're working on as a county. It's all about preserving our heritage, and I don't know if any of you know, but back in the 1850s, a tiny island on the edge of Europe became the centre of global communications. And it wasn't Ireland, it was Valentia Island. So it's an incredible story, and if you go to Valentia today, you actually won't see any evidence of it. And it's a story that we should be preserving for future generations, and that's what this whole story is about. So, what did I just see? Am I moving on here? Maybe if you just push the on button there. Technology hasn't moved on a lot since the 1850s. Okay, so Joan gave me 10 minutes to give you 150 years of history. Okay, so I'm going to do it really fast. So the transatlantic cable ran from Valentia Island to Heart's Content in Newfoundland, and it changed the world. Two worlds became one. You had the old world of Europe and you had the new world of America. And this project changed the world. It changed communication from 2 weeks to 2 minutes. So if you had a message in Europe and you were going to America, you were only going by boat. And depending on the weather, it could take anything from 10 days to 15 days. So the transatlantic cable changed this communication to 2 minutes, and it changed, if you think about it, it was the birth of the internet. It changed the way the world communicates. And it was when the edge of Ireland, the edge of Europe, became the centre of the world. So here's the history that you all have to pay attention to. And remember this guy's name, Cyrus Field I. He was an American entrepreneur. He was a paper merchant. And somebody put the idea to him about running a telegraph cable from Canada down to New York, because it'd speed up communications. And he said, I'm not interested in that. I want to put a telegraph underwater from America to Europe. It took him, there was no technology at that time that could manage this. So this cable was 3 times deeper, 3 times longer, and it took several attempts. But the guy never gave up. The first transatlantic message that went from Ireland to America was from Queen Victoria to James Buchanan in 1858. And it went from a tiny little, it's called the Slate Yard on Valentia Island. It took, like I said, several attempts. The cable snapped, there was bad weather, they didn't have a ship that was big enough to carry the cable. And so eventually they did have a permanent cable, but 100 years later the station closed. And the day the station closed, they sold all the equipment, and the building's been sitting there empty ever since. On the other side of the world, Canada closed their station, but they kept every piece of equipment intact from the day it closed, which is an interesting point. This is an image back in the 1860s. This is Cyrus Field, another Manel, by the way. They were well represented there. So Cyrus Field was the man who came up with the money and the perseverance to make it happen. And this is the Knight of Kerry. Just remember those 2 names, right? Wonderfully attired, all these men deciding where the cable was going to be laid. And again, they needed money, they needed perseverance, they needed engineering, they needed maritime. It was an incredible story. There wasn't a woman in sight. This is now, and again, there was no photography, so a lot of the images are from an artist called Dudley, and he was brought on all of the ships to record everything that was happening. And this is a beautiful image of the ships looking in on Valentia, on Knightstown. This is the Slate Yard where the message was transmitted from. And this is an image from Foilhammer Bay on Valentia Island. And if you see, look at all the people literally pulling the cable ashore. If you go to Foilhammer Bay today, you wouldn't go near that edge. But these guys pulled this cable up and up that cliff face and into a little telegraph hut. It was incredible what they did. And bear in mind, this happened just a few years after the famine as well. And this is my second incredible story that I'm going to tell you tonight. And just if you can follow this. How did it come about that we decided to go for World Heritage status? I had never been to Valentia Island, I hate to admit. I'm a Wexford woman living in Kerry for the last 20 years, but I'd never been to Valentia. So this is Professor Al Gillespie. He's from New Zealand. He's married to a woman from Tralee. He was home on holidays, and I invited him to come in and give a talk to 100 people about what's Ireland, or what's Kerry's future. And he was involved in World Heritage around the world. So he came to Tralee and he spoke about 3 projects in Kerry that are underrepresented. One was St. Brendan and the voyage he made. One was the transatlantic cable that nobody knew about. And the third was Tralee Bay and what lies beneath the ocean. So there were 3 projects. So I was the head of the tourism department at that time, and I brought the projects back to my students and said, you guys look at St. Brendan, you look at the transatlantic cable, and I don't know anything about under the ocean, but equally I didn't know anything about transatlantic cables, but that didn't stop us. So anyway, our students did some work and we kept in touch with this professor on Skype, and he was great. But he also was working on a project on the west coast of America in a little island called the San Juans, protecting the environment. And he was dealing with this lady, Stephanie Buffum. And they were on Skype, and Stephanie said, oh, will I introduce you to my husband? He's just walked by. And she said, this is Cyrus Field IV. Right? And so he said, oh my God, I was in Ireland, I'm working on student projects in this little college in Kerry, and she'd love to talk to you. So Stephanie emailed me. This is Cyrus Field IV, the handsome man here. And Stephanie Buffum is her name, so when her email came into mine, I trashed it. I was like, Buffum? That's strange. And then I said, I better go back and look at that again. And so I said, oh my God, this is incredible. So I contacted the then county manager and I said, do you know anyone in Valentia? And so he put me in touch with this man, Anthony O'Connell, who was the chairperson of the local community. And sadly, Anthony passed away about 2 months ago, unfortunately. It was very sad. But anyway, the year of the gathering, which Joan, it was actually 2013 we met. Women in Media was one of the gathering events. And so we said, you know what, wouldn't it be lovely to bring back Cyrus Field IV to where his great-great-grandfather stood on the island, bringing the cable ashore. This man here is the Knight of Kerry. So his great-great-grandfather, I have to keep remembering how many great-grandfathers. So we brought the Knight of Kerry and Cyrus Field IV back for the gathering. And we had an amazing event. And we said, you know what, we've got to do something about this. So Al Gillespie said, you've got a World Heritage project sitting in your lap. What are you doing about it? So I went down to Valentia community and I met with the local community, 5 men. And they said to me, what do you want us to do? I said, I don't want you to do anything. This is your story. What do you want to do? I said, it has to come from the bottom up. It has to be what the community want, because that's one of the biggest problems with a lot of projects. The community themselves don't want it. And Dee was asking me earlier on, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about communities. And if it's good for the community, it's good for everybody. And I think that that's a really important aspect of the story. So UNESCO World Heritage, and I won't go into it in too much detail, the important thing, it has to be of outstanding universal value and it has to be for everyone. So if you think about how this cable connected the world and it moved on from there obviously, so it's about preserving our heritage and telling it for the next generations to come. These are all the World Heritage sites in the world. You have cultural sites, you have the other word won't come to me, sorry, physical sites. These are a sample of some of the World Heritage sites in the world. There's over 1,000 in 167 states. America's 22, Australia there's 10, Italy has 47, France is 39, Spain 44, Canada 19, England 28. How many have Ireland got?
1, 2.
2. 3 if you include the Giant's Causeway. Oops, I keep pushing that, I should be going here. 2 stunning sites. Now, isn't it incredible that off the coast of Valencia Island is our premier heritage site? So on one site we were communicating to God, and on the other site we were communicating around the world. So it's all about communication. The World Heritage process, just to let you know where we're at, we lobbied government. They only open up the list every 10 years. And we're going, why? What's stopping you? You can decide today, open it up. And they wouldn't. Anyway, it's open now. And so we started this project in 2013. It opens now, and the deadline is 2020. So we will apply in 2020. You have to be on the Irish list for at least a year, and then the government have to decide whether you merit going forward. Now the good news is there's 10 criteria for World Heritage. You only have to meet 1. We meet 6. It's incredible. This story is just incredible. We founded a foundation board, Maura Merle. This is her appearance tonight. Maura championed it for us. We've fantastic people on it like Martin Shanahan from the IDA, who's a Kerry man. This is not Eddie Hobbs, it's Leonard Hobbs, and he's the Director of Research in Trinity. And we have, we've other people on the board who aren't in the photo, but we've had huge support from people. So our job on the foundation board is to raise money, obviously, and help the community, because they'd never come up with the money on their own. The fantastic news is that we got 1.27 million under the Rural Regeneration Fund. We got 160 from Fall to Ireland recently, and we've raised about 200,000 ourselves. So that's a big achievement. We still haven't got anywhere. We'll use the money to revive the station. This is the station in Valencia. When we got on to our Canadian counterparts, they said, this is fantastic. So we did all the research for them and we handed it over to them. And guess what? They're on the Canadian tentative list ahead of us. But what's great is that we now will put in a joint application. And a transboundary application is even more important. So we've very positive expectations. Another lovely story. This is Mrs. Polymer. Her husband bought the Valencia cable station about 20 years ago. They ran a small factory out of it. Nine people are employed there. She handed over the building to the community last year as a gesture to say, this is your heritage, it's your past, and here's the cable station. So that's been absolutely incredible. And I suppose we couldn't have done it without a lot of donations from businesses, and a lot of, obviously, then going after government grants, but it has all worked. And before I finish up, I want to thank 2 people, and one is Joan, because I've been coming here from the first year, and I've learned so much, and it's challenged me to think about what I do in my role, and that's really, really important. And I've taken a lot for granted. And the other person I'm going to thank is Derval, because I listened to her at one of the talks, and she said to me, if you're on a board, you need to be out there helping every other woman. And here was I on the board of Fall to Ireland thinking, well, I'm just doing my job. But I have a responsibility, and Derval highlighted that to me, so thank you. And I will have that bottle of red wine later on. So thank you all very much, I appreciate it.
Fascinating stuff, and that is why we're all here. So thanks, Mary Rose. Yeah, next up, Dee. Dee Keogh. I can only describe Dee as indescribable. I've known her for some time, and every time we meet, it's in a different capacity. I've met her in the school, where she helped my daughter and many others through some of their darker days. I've met her through her work with her many local women's group, and now we meet every Monday night at yoga class. But Dee has many talents ranging from counselling, mentoring and writing. Her most recent featured on the Round Tuberty show. She wrote a letter on foot of Lavinia Kerwick's appearance, where she thanked Lavinia on all our behalves for her bravery in choosing to be named publicly, and thus giving many more women the courage to come forward. She's currently working on her book, Why I Never Met Oprah, and tells me that I have to see if I can fix that next year here in Women in Media. Tonight I can guarantee you will all enjoy her immensely. Ladies and gentlemen, Dee Keogh.
Gosh, how do I follow that? I'm down on the programme as a community activist, you know, and I said, what exactly is that, you know? And Joan said to me, what do you exactly do? And they say you teach best what you need to learn most, you know? And I teach personal development, and I still can't say no. And I can't say no without feeling guilty. And I can't say no without giving a shite either, do you know? So I have had the privilege of, I'll tell you my journey. I'm 30 years working in community development. I started off in Tralee, in An-Cassan, an organisation that was headed and founded by the late Anne-Louise Gilligan and Catherine Sapone, who's now doing her stuff. But one of the things that they taught me was that in community development, it was almost like you got reparented or something. They just believed you were great, and if somebody told you were great, you kind of went, yeah, I must be. Whereas in school, it's a little bit like they pour the information in, whereas in community development, they recognise that what you bring is valuable and your shared experience. So I'm just going to read something that I've used, and it's called Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to get out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in that same place, but it isn't my fault. It takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit, but my eyes are open, and I know where I am. It is my fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down a different street. So I've used that poem from Tralee to Tralee to Ballybunion. But between the verses, we are opened up to more conversation. The experiences are shared. We disrobe. We take off our cultures, our labels, and our roles, and we begin to become new again. And I have witnessed groups. I ran a program called the Equality for Women Measure. And one of the women, when I asked her why she was here, I ran it in Tralee, Listowel and Castle Island. I worked with over 400 women. It was a fantastic initiative from the Department of Justice and Law Reform. And now sometimes we got the funding in the summer, which isn't a great time to attract women. But I never turned anybody away, and even if they didn't fit the criteria, because there was so much to be gained from women being together. But one woman said, I said, why are you here? And she said, I don't know. She said, I heard the advertisement on the radio about equality for women. And she said, all I know is I'm an authority on inequality for women. I was brought up in a farm with 3 brothers, and my eldest brother inherited the farm, and the other 2 were sent to college. And I inherited the responsibility roles of everything in the house. I'm 53 now, and I'm ready to start my life. And that was the wisdom that was in the room. It was matter of fact. There was women running farms, there was women with 2 cleaning jobs, and they were being sent into places to get an interview for a job. of cleaning that they had 2 already. And one of the women said, like, I wonder if they give me a course on show me how to put up shelves. Like, that would be more important to me. And there was this richness of women and resources, and it was untapped, and because they didn't fit boxes. But most of the women I met didn't know how brilliant they were. And so when you get involved in community, activism then is a byproduct of it. Just because you see, because when you're in community, you're with what is real, what's raw, what's alive, and what's living. And back in November, the Tralee Women's Resource Centre was just closed down. No discussion, no words, just silence, blocked. We just couldn't believe it. And most people are getting on, particularly in November. So a group of us got together, and we lobbied, we wrote to the papers, we wrote to the various funding agencies, and it was like a vacuum, and we just got nothing back. So it was for 4 months we went on, and we kept going with it, for 4 weeks over the Christmas. And coming back, I was just saying, if we don't get this proposal, we had to have a proposal in to try and get the funding and to reinstate it. We set up an interim board. And I tell this story about activism for a reason. So I looked over at my colleague, just a woman that was as wore out as I was, and I said, Jesus, Rita, if we don't get the funding, I'm bailing out. Like, I just can't do it. And it was like as if, and we talked about, advocates of people that, you've got to step out. You just have to, that thing, lean in and all this and step up and, but... I'm leaned in and I'm stepped up and I'm stepped down and my back is killing me and my arse is broke. I'm trying to be perfect and I'm trying to do it right, but you know what, I still have to live with what is. And I just looked over at Rita and she said, where's the women? Like, where's the women? I said, they're fucking bunched. They're absolutely out trying to keep their head above water. But where's the other women? Where's the women that are advocating? Because people are turning to me, you don't really need a centre. I said, you don't need a centre for women. Come on. And this is for, and I said, and again, it's a little, that was beautiful what Dervla had said to Mary Rose. You've got to be there for the people that can't speak, for the people that are behind us. Like, the heroes aren't out there, they're here, like we all have it. So I was giving up anyway, and we were at this meeting, the interim board of the Kerry Women. We said we're calling ourselves Kerry Women's Resource Centre, not Tralee. And this woman came in with a trolley, those little shopping trolleys. And she was, well in her 70s, and she said, is this for the Kerry Women's Resource Centre? We said yes. And she sat down and she handed us a letter like that. She said, that's my story. I want you to, if you want to use it, you can use it. But you just don't mention my name if you need to use it on the radio or whatever, because we were getting a spot on Deirdre Walsh. And we read the story. And I'll never forget it. And what it did was, as long as I have breath, I will do everything I can to ensure that we get Kerry Women's Resource Centre going, because it was because her courage to come in there, to me that's activism. But what happened was, we got women then to the resort, we got women for International Women's Day, loads of people. I'm sorry if I go over the time, I'm just real excited because I want to say what happened after that. So we got a load of women together. We said, listen, the mini marathon is the biggest single women's event in Europe. We want €20,000 because we can open our doors. Then we'll attract a benefactor. And we got people sponsored the cards, for the printing of them. We hadn't a bob. So this woman that I had, just say we'll call her Nora, she was one of the women on the committee is going up for the local elections, just say, and she asked us to help. And you know the way you just can't say no. I didn't want to go around canvassing, I didn't want to do anything, but I thought of what she had done to help us get this, to be part of the centre. So I rocked up anyway on the 18th of April, a bit resentful. Do you know how important I am, that I had to give up 4 hours of canvassing? And who did I get put with? Only that woman, say we'll call her Nora. I was canvassing with her. She's, I'd say, well into her 70s. And I went around the doors with her, and I learned so much about life and what activism is. But when she was at the door, she'd say, what do you think? I can't get a hearing aid. She would talk about, she was able to engage, you know, she talked about she can't afford a hearing aid and she's a medical card, and you're right, and she was talking about riling them and getting them going. But it was this story, and I'll finish on this, was, you know, some people's houses, I didn't notice anyway before, they'd have lovely plants and all, and there was a plant. And she said, I used to have one of those plants, but the slugs ate everything. I don't know what it's called. And I said, maybe whoever answers will ask them, because theirs was blooming. So this man came out and we introduced ourselves, and she said to him, I had a plant like that, what's it called? He said, that's a hosta. I don't know if, you know, anyway, he said, that's a hosta. He said, and slugs, he said, Jesus, he said, they came from China with suitcases, they love it so much, you know. And she said, how did you know, how is it so vibrant? And he said, I lashed down the slug pellets, you know. And she said, oh, right. And just very gently, she said, do you know that the population of the thrush are diminishing? He said, no. Yeah, she said, they don't have enough slugs, they don't have enough snails, you know, to eat her slugs. He went, oh, well, he said, plant or the thrush. You know, he wasn't put out, but it's what she said. So we were walking down the drive, and I said, how do you know so much about thrushes? And she said, Dee, she said, when my heart was in my heel, it was the sound of the thrush that brought me alive. And I could get up and I could feed the kids. And I knew I had learned something very valuable that day. And it was about what it means to be real and be together, and to have that knowledge and that knowing of what the thrush did, the sound of the thrush did. And just as we were finished, you know, I was going, wow, you know, I'd be into poetry. The sound of the thrush, the heel, jeez, I was going to write a poem about that. And just as we were finished, she said, there's a couple of houses there that we missed, because it was getting on 8:30 that evening, and I said, geez, I'm knackered now, do you know? Like, I think I'm there since 4:30, you know, 5:30. And she said, yeah, I said, I loved her, do you know, she's my best friend, I want to drop her. Where do you live? I'll drop you home. And she said, you know, she told me where she lived, and then she said, is there any of those manifestos left? I said, yeah. She said, I've nothing to do tomorrow. I'll drop around and I'll do those houses around there, because we didn't finish them, and I like to be thorough. And I said, all right, yeah, okay. So what I got in that sense, in that evening, that I didn't want to do it, or I didn't want to go because I was so tired or whatever, I got enriched by, like what you were talking about, people that have gone before me and knows what it's like to take the lead and then to give it back to you, and then what way am I going to hold that? And I suppose I just want to acknowledge, you know, to me that's what real community activism is. So thanks for listening. Thank you very much.